All right, hello there everybody. Today is Thursday, April 9th, and hopefully my rural internet connection will hold up for the duration of this Fireplace Chat. I'm going to start, as I usually do, with the daily statistical breakdown, share with you what's happening in terms of confirmed positive cases in Sonoma County, dive into where they are, how they were transmitted, all of the nitty-gritty details. I'm going to apologize in advance because this is going to be a bit of a data dump today. I've got a lot of information to share with you, resources for small businesses, resources and information for tenants' rights. So I've got a lot of information and we'll hopefully get through it, and hopefully I won't talk too quickly. All right, let's start with the total cases. Total cases, 142. We have 84 active cases in Sonoma County, 52 recovered, and still that one fatality. In terms of source, 39 of those cases came from travel, 22 came from community spread. That means sort of an unknown source of community contagion. 15 are currently under investigation. And then here's some really important information. 66 of those cases came from close contacts. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about contact investigation later in this little program. Okay, in terms of age, we do have 9 now from 0 to 17. So that is 9 minors who have been COVID-19 positive. We have 68 people who are in the age range from 18 to 49. We have 40 confirmed positives in the age range of 50 through 64, and then we have 25 that are 65 and older population. Again, we continue to skew a little bit more female than male in terms of our breakdown demographics. We have 60 males who have tested positive for COVID-19 and 82 females. Of the total, 20 have required and 122 have not required hospitalization. The total tests, I'm really excited to say that we have surpassed 3 in Sonoma County. I know that we still need to do more proactive testing, but we are getting up there and we are really working very hard to proactively test more people. So actually our total test number as of tonight is 3,251 tests. In terms of regions, we continue to see it around the county, although increasing numbers in the central area of the county. So 17 in North County, 18 cases in South County, 15 in East County, 13 in West County, and 77 in Central County, with 2 under investigation. All right, now I'm going to do a little bit of background information. Yesterday, we actually saw a really substantial spike in the number of positive COVID-19 tests here in Sonoma County, and I want to explain why. Actually, as of last night, it was a plus 16 from yesterday, but as of today, it sounded like one came in after information was posted, and so there were actually 17 confirmed new positive cases yesterday, which is a big jump compared to absolutely what we need to do to really get our hands, around this, our arms around this, and try to contain it and know exactly where it is in the community. All right, moving on, I want to talk a little bit about tenant protections. So this must be very confusing if you are a renter right now. We have 3 different levels of tenant protections at 3 different levels of government. So first what happened was the governor issued an executive order that allowed local jurisdictions to implement tenant protection. The County of Sonoma moved really quickly, and we stepped up, and the Board of Supervisors on a 5-0 vote passed some defenses against eviction, right? It basically meant that a landlord could not kick someone out for non-payment due to impacts of the coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic. Then, actually, Governor Newsom went ahead and passed his own tenant protection executive order that applies throughout the state. And then the late breaking news is that on Monday, the Judicial Council actually issued a really critical decision that applies not just to tenants, but also to commercial tenants. And I actually have a phone number for you if you need more information about this. And I actually want to read a little bit of what legal aid provided in terms of information about this decision. So this is really important for anyone who is a tenant, and I think it's important that you know your rights. Okay, a new statewide emergency rule now prevents any court from issuing eviction summons against tenants for any reason other than if it's necessary to protect health and safety, such as a tenant who is physically abusing another tenant or their landlord. This rule will remain in effect for 90 days after the governor lifts the state of emergency, unless the rule is changed or eliminated before then. So this actually prevents any court from issuing eviction summons against tenants for any reason whatsoever. So this is actually a pretty strong protection. One of the frequently asked questions on this is, do I still have to pay rent while the emergency rule is in place? Yes, tenants are still required to pay the rent if they are able to. Your landlord cannot evict you while the rule is in place, but you still must pay the rent. Once the emergency is over, your landlord will be able to collect all the rent you owe and may evict you if it's not paid. However, it's also important to note that since we also have our local ordinance, if you are unable to pay the rent because of the COVID-19 pandemic, legal aid still recommends that you gather evidence to demonstrate that your income was negatively impacted by the pandemic. Let your landlord know in writing why you can't pay the rent. They may assist you later when evictions are once again permitted. And I actually have a hotline for you all. If there's any tenant who has questions about their individual situation, I am not a tenants' right attorney, but you can call legal aid. Their housing hotline is 707-843-4432. Again, that's 843-4432, and they can help you with various tenant issues. I also want to talk a little bit about the CARES Act, which is the federal stimulus bill that was passed at a little while ago. So there's been a lot of challenges, honestly, with implementing this on a local level, and I've heard a lot of frustration from people who really need relief now and are not seeing it come forward. So I want to just address that head on. First of all, we have PPP, which is the Paycheck Protection Program. This is a really exciting opportunity that small businesses have to get a loan, upfront money backed by the federal government, and then it can actually be forgiven if you maintain your payroll. And so it's essentially ultimately a grant to small businesses. This is a really critical resource, and it's been very challenging to implement at our independent banks here. And so I just want you to know that I've been in conversation with various folks in the business community and also with our state and federal elected officials' offices. They are working on this. And so we're hoping that this is, just kind of going to be a matter of days while they iron out the details and they're able to then process those loan applications. There's a lot of fear right now in the business community that other big banks, across the country are issuing these loans and that the pot of money is going to run out. I did speak with Stephen Gale from Congressman Mike Thompson's office, and he did not think that was the case. He thinks this is just, some ironing out of bureaucratic processes, trying to figure out how to get the money to the banks and then the banks to be able to approve the loans. And so hopefully those kinks will be worked out in the next week or so. I also want to acknowledge the challenge that people have had signing up for unemployment, the unemployment benefits. And this is extremely challenging because the good news is that the federal government is now allowing independent contractors to sign up for unemployment. But unfortunately, right now, the state form doesn't allow you to actually fill it out as an independent contractor. And so I flagged this as an issue for Senator McGuire's office, and I know that they are working furiously to try to get EDD to be able to process this for independent contractors. So again, that option is not currently available, but they are working very hard on making it available. I also did flag for Senator McGuire's office the fact that a number of people have their unemployment benefits. They submitted it weeks ago and they still haven't gotten it. So they're aware and they're trying to move that process along. It's very frustrating when we have these resources supposedly available, but then, people hear about it, they read about it in the newspaper, and unfortunately, there's still some kinks to be worked out in terms of the implementation of these programs. But please know that the state government is working very hard to make sure that the unemployment will be available for folks soon. Finally, I have some positive news, which is that I do have some resources for local businesses here on a local level. If you go to sonomaedb.org, we have some information about the various resources that are available for small businesses. Again, that's sonomaedb.org. And we also have a hotline for businesses. If you have questions about the public health order, you want to be referred to resources, you can call us at 565-4667. So those are some business resources. Also, if you're in need of food, please go to socoemergency.org. We have worked very hard to enter into contracts with a number of food providers. So the county is out there trying to make sure that our residents are fed. And I know that since we're still waiting for some of these, the stimulus check, unemployment benefits, all of these things are not quite there yet, that people may have a hard time being able to afford their groceries. So go to socoemergency.org. There's a whole list of food resources. And if you are actually able to help, cvnl.org is a great way that you can step up and help with the delivery of food to local residents who need it, or distributing foods at some of the sites all around the county. I know that a lot of our food nonprofits are working very hard to make sure they're following best practices, masking, gloves, lots of hand sanitizer, and hand washing. So, if you are able-bodied and you're able to go out there and volunteer, that would be greatly appreciated. All right, now I asked got some questions ahead of time because I knew that my internet connection was a little bit spotty. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those up so that I can respond to the questions that I was asked in advance. I know that the first question was around how do we get people back to work? There are a lot of folks who are very frustrated right now and who want to be able to open their businesses' doors and want to be able to bring their employees back and to work, just to get to work. So I want you to know that we're having lots of conversations about what kinds of mitigation measures could be put in place to start to reopen the economy. We are not going to be in a pre-pandemic world for quite some time, right? We're not going to be able to go about business as usual, having big parades and big gatherings and, going to the grocery store without thinking about how close you are to the next person. That world is gone for a while, right? But we do have opportunities to think about how can we create a new economy? How can we create a new social fabric? And so I was actually on the phone today with a number of state and federal and city elected officials and business leaders, and we're talking about what are those mitigation measures and what are the need. One of the things that we're going to be doing is spending some county money to help small businesses actually set up e-commerce retail websites, right? And one of those applications actually was traditionally we have art trails and art at the source where people get to go out and shop at local galleries and buy things straight from the artist. Well, that's not going to really work right now in the world of the COVID-19 pandemic. So instead, we're going to give a grant to a nonprofit organization that's going to set up an online retail system so that artists can sell their work virtually. So those are some of the ideas, how can we make sure that we're supporting our small businesses and trying to get our economy back going again? Because that's critical. And I think that it just gives people hope too, right? When you're able to get back to work, even if it's a little bit different than it was. I think that we all are in this together and we want to make sure that people are able to get back to work as soon as they can, as long as it is safe. And that's the critical thing. And so when we're thinking about long-range planning, we have to be thinking about not only restructuring businesses in ways that make them more safe, but also what are the other mitigation measures we can put in place. And those mitigation measures include, aggressive thermal scanning when you go in places. It could include universal masking for everyone, mandatorily. It could involve, a whole bunch of different things. Mandatory social distancing, which we already have. I think that there are ways that we can start to, reopen our society. Not tomorrow, right? Not the day after that, but we are thinking about what we can do to make sure that we get back to some kind of new normal state. All right, I'm going to go back to the questions. Sorry, I rambled on for a little long on that one, but I think it's really important to think about what is the future of our community and how can we rebound and really showcase our resilience on this. Okay, some other questions that I have are questions about second homes. Not okay right now to go back and forth between second homes. That is very clear. We have it right up on our FAQs on socoemergency.org regarding the public health order. We are trying very hard to message about this. If you have any suggestions with how to message this, please let me know. We are also thinking about sending proactive letters out to everyone who has a vacation rental permit in Sonoma County through the county in order to notify them that if they're, inviting tourists up here right now, they're operating in violation of the public health order. And I actually would like to be able to revoke their vacation rental permit through the county if they do violate the public health order, because it's a very serious offense, and I think that it needs to be taken seriously. So that's a little bit about the issues of tourism. There's a question, who will be housed at the alternative care sites? Can and will the April 10th Sonoma County property tax deadline be extended? The answer to who will be housed at the alternative care sites, we will have a space for unsheltered residents who are at higher risk for COVID-19 populations. We will also have places for other people to be able to self-quarantine and self-isolate if they are positive, for instance, and they obviously don't want to be with their household, potentially infecting those other close contacts. Additionally, we will actually have, medical facilities as part of the Sonoma State Alternative Care Site. So the great thing about Sonoma State is its entire campus. So it offers up an opportunity to have these different services all at the same place, but in different locations on the campus. And the other question was about the property tax deadline. Unfortunately, the property tax deadline has not been extended. The property tax deadline would have to be extended actually by an act of the state legislature. But the good news is that our tax collector, Eric Rozier, is committed to offering waivers, penalty waivers, so that you wouldn't have to pay a late fee or a fine if you were unable to pay your property as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So stay tuned to his website. I'm not sure if the application is up yet. I know he's been working furiously to get an application for those late fees waivers. And so you do have an opportunity if you cannot afford to pay your property taxes. We do not want to punish you. That would not be right. And I know that Eric Rozier, who is our independently elected tax collector, feels the same way. So he will make sure that you are taken care of if you're struggling to pay your property taxes. All right. I have a question about, I would like to hear your thoughts on constitutional rights infringement and if there is a plan if Sonoma so I just want to acknowledge that. And if it gets sued, if we get sued, we do have attorneys who will defend the county. But I think that we're all in the same boat. All across the country, this is happening, right? All across the country, we are banning large gatherings. We are under shelter-in-place orders. So I know that it's frustrating to impinge upon those constitutional rights that we hold near and dear to our heart. But that is just the reality that we are in right now. Other questions? When does it look like we will be able to get enough swabs to do more serious impact testing? This is a great question. So we have been getting very creative, and by creative, I literally mean online shopping. We've been stalking Amazon, for instance, to see if we can get swabs there. And so we actually, ordered some swabs online in addition to going through the traditional government channels. So we're requesting them from, the state government, we're requesting them from the federal government. And we're also just going out on our own and seeing if we can order 100 swabs here or order 100 swabs there. So we are doing everything that we can to leave no stone unturned. We're making sure that we're going to go fight for our constituents and try to get as much as we can in terms of resources. Next question. Is anyone overseeing how hospitals are managing cross-contamination, in particular Kaiser? Rumor has it they are not isolating COVID patients well and still not letting nurses use enough protective gear. One thing that could help with this would be shifting mandatory orders around masking. And so, that may be something that happens, is that there is a shift to, really mandating certain levels of masking and personal protective equipment for different forms of healthcare. So stay tuned for that. I'm sure that will be a conversation in the days to come. Question, can we look into Stanford conducting this antibody testing in Sonoma County? Many of us have wondered if we already had it here in our community. We are definitely interested in conducting antibody testing, and it's actually on the list of mitigation measures that we would like to explore. So the more that we know, some of those mitigation measures would be antibody testing. It would be those close contact investigations. It would be aggressive isolation and quarantining of not only confirmed positive cases, but also anyone who has come into contact with those confirmed positive cases. Those are the ways that we could help to get a handle on the disease without having this mandatory shelter-in-place order for everyone. So that would be part of one of those strategic, plans in order to look at different forms of mitigation. Okay, another question on antibody testing. Oh, I also wanted to mention, I've been hearing a lot of rumors that, we've had COVID-19 in Sonoma County for many months. There is no evidence of that at this point in time. And I acknowledge, that we weren't testing 3 months or 6 months ago, but I just also would remind people that I know a lot of people were sick in the winter, but we also had a fairly aggressive flu season in Sonoma County. And so, the flu season was actually peaking right as COVID-19 was accelerating in Sonoma County. And so I want to make sure that we're not repeating rumors that are not actually based in data. And we don't yet have any evidence that it has been in our community for months on end. Obviously, antibody testing would help us learn who in the community has had it, and that is definitely something we want to explore. What is the county doing to keep a balance between CDC guidelines to not break up existing homeless encampments and allowing new encampments to become established? Doyle Park, 5th Street, 6th Street, 9th Street underpasses are exploding in new numbers. This is a big challenge, and I think the best way that we can address this is to try to stand up that alternative care site and to start moving people into it, right? Since we can't, disband homeless encampments in terms of taking law enforcement action or just displacing them, because that's actually very dangerous right now in terms of COVID-19 transmission. We do need to be very compassionate and to mobilize all of our resources to try to get people into shelter. So that's what we're doing. We do have $1 million from the state. Governor Newsom opened up a new pot of funding, and $500,000 went to the county and $500,000 went to the Home Leadership Council, which I also serve on. We are actually probably going to be having a meeting either tomorrow or Monday with our sort of ad hoc group about how we're going to fund these projects to try to move that forward as quickly as we possibly can. So stay tuned. And in the meantime, we are also providing porta potties and hand washing stations, and also advising encampment residents on social distancing protocols and practices. So we are trying to actively address sanitation issues in those homeless encampments, even while we try to then work on moving people into better forms of shelter. All right. Please note that there are students throughout Sonoma County with no access to internet. This is an equity issue we need to address as a community. I could not agree more. You are 100% right about that. And this is something I've been working on for years, but that has an increased sense of urgency. I'm hopeful that we will actually see action from the federal government in terms of funding rural broadband finally, because I think that when a crisis like this hits and when all students are now forced to distance learn, it really shows the social inequity that has existed for many, many years. And I also want to say this is not just a rural issue. I was on the phone with the city of Santa Rosa today. There are actually people inside the city of Santa Rosa who have no access to internet, largely socioeconomically disadvantaged communities. So it's a huge problem. I do know that the schools are trying to step up, trying to provide people with hotspots and Chromebooks and other things to make sure that people have access to the internet. But it's very challenging, especially in rural West County. I have a question about the Paycheck Protection Plan grant. And I will definitely follow up with Jennifer independently on her specific scenario. I know it's been very, very frustrating, and I did address that at the beginning of this video, that we're having some challenges implementing the PPP as well as the UI benefits. So scrolling down, this question: how come the data on how many cases are in each area of the county was removed from the SoCo emergency dashboard? It is not. It's on there. I just saw it tonight, and it's still up and running. Must have been something, I don't know, maybe they were updating it when you checked. What about these B&B rentals that keep renting? How is this being controlled? So if there is a B&B that is operating in violation of the public health order, please call your local law enforcement hotline. This is illegal, and it is enforceable either by the local police department or by the sheriff. We're also, as I said before, looking at issuing blanket letters to everyone who has a permit, just warning them. And I'm also actually trying to get on the Board of Supervisors agenda something that would codify and would actually require that if someone were found to be operating in violation of the public health order, we could actually revoke their vacation rental permit, and then we could actually even potentially ban them from applying for a new permit for 10 years. So we can actually start to enforce some pretty significant penalties, because it's not okay that a lot of businesses are doing the right thing and taking the economic hit, and they're closing their doors, and then you've got a few people who are profiteering and making a lot of money doing something that's illegal right now. So I stand very strongly against illegal vacation rentals at this point in time.
Just to remind people that you're reading
Okay, I just want to remind, my husband just said to remind you all that I am reading questions that were asked ahead of time on my Facebook page. So I will try to get to some of the questions that are coming in real time, but I want to see if I can get through these first. Vesta said that businesses are confused by the definition of essential. And so are you a non-essential or essential business? The best way to find out and to get more information about that is to call our business hotline, which is 565-4667. So if you've got any questions, if you are a special snowflake business, you're unique, you don't know if you qualify, that's the phone number to call. All right. More challenges in the office. Senator McGuire has done a fantastic job. His staff is working around the clock trying to help troubleshoot people who are having problems applying for unemployment. So please reach out to State Senator Mike McGuire's office if you have an unemployment question. He can try to work you through the EDD system, and he's got staff who are helping constituents each and every day with that. Question is, how many active COVID-19 cases do we have in the Lower River area? I do not have access to that information. We are only told broadly by region. a non-emergency hotline. For the Sonoma County Sheriff, that is 565-2121. Got that one memorized now. So if you see a business that is not following safety protocol, please report them to the non-emergency law enforcement hotline. All right, let's see. I think that was it. I got to the end of the questions that were given ahead of time. So now I'm going to look to my husband to see what's been rolling in over the course of this video.
Do you have any information about the youngest person of the...
That's a great question. So the question was, do I have any information about the youngest person who would be a confirmed positive in the county? And I do not. And I have actually requested that information. I know that the public health officer is working on trying to get more detailed demographic information. And I also do remember that it's been a couple of weeks that you guys have requested a breakdown further than I think we've got right now, ages 18 to 49, and that's a very large age range. And so the public health officer did agree to break that down into 2 different columns so that you can see a little bit more details. And we will also be providing information about what are the age ranges of those patients that have been hospitalized. Because I know a lot of people want to know, are people who are young, the minors, are they hospitalized? Are people, that are in the age range of 18 to 49 being hospitalized? A lot of questions. So we're definitely working on that, and hopefully that will be up in the next few days. Next question.
Someone just asked about a specific shelterless person and is there funds available so they can go to a hotel, or how to help someone?
So someone asked about a specific unsheltered person and how do we get them assistance. Right now we do not have hotel vouchers, but we are working very quickly, and we actually expect to have space in the trailers open up, I believe, on Wednesday of next week. And then the alternate care site will be following that and provide additional surge resources for that. If you've got an individual person who needs help, please send me an email, linda.hopkins@sonoma-county.org, and we can follow up and make sure that they are part of our coordinated entry system. I'll be honest, we have nearly 3,000 homeless residents in Sonoma County. We do not have rooms for all of them, and people will be prioritized based on how vulnerable they are to COVID-19. But we will do our absolute best with the resources that we have to try to address cases, so please feel free to reach out directly.
So, Missy, could you repeat what you said about relief for commercial rents, because the Wi-Fi...
Okay, sorry. So apparently my rural Wi-Fi hit again, and the question was, can I repeat what I said about commercial rents? So the Judicial Council ruling applies not only to residential tenants, but also to commercial tenants. And so commercial tenants cannot be evicted for any reason for the duration of the declared state of emergency by the governor, and then I think it was plus 90 days after that. So there is an opportunity for people, if they're unable to pay their rent, they can't be evicted. And I've heard a lot from small business owners who are really concerned about their inability to pay rent because they're not receiving any income. Yes, so it says this rule will remain in effect for 90 days after the governor lifts the state of emergency, unless the rule is changed or eliminated before then. And I'm just going to say the sentence one more time because I think it's really important. A new statewide emergency rule now prevents any court from issuing eviction summons against tenants for any reason other than if necessary to protect health and safety, such as a tenant who is physically abusing another tenant or their landlord. This rule will remain in effect for 90 days after the governor lifts the state of emergency. And that applies to not only residential tenants, but also commercial tenants. So, other questions?
You just asked about the idea of doing some sort of virtual forum to talk about more ideas about new ways to do business.
I think that's a great idea. Someone suggested having a virtual forum about new ways of doing business. I would love to work on that. I actually feel very honored to be working with my colleague on the board, Supervisor David Rabbit, and we are kind of tag teaming economic issues. I was originally assigned to work on agriculture and tourism industry liaison work, and he was working on small business and chambers of commerce, but we realized that there's this whole economic picture that we need to be talking about, and so we are working very hard to stand up resources. Oh, I also wanted to mention that we do now have a virtual LAC, so a virtual local assistance center, and that also provides a lot of resources and information for small business owners. But let's figure out how we can do a giant Zoom meeting and we can get all of the small business owners in West County to call in and we can brainstorm ideas. I think that's a really, really good idea. I also wanted to mention that County Council and our Public Health Department and our Economic Development Board will be holding some forums for industry leaders to talk about, clarifications in the public health order or what kinds of mitigation strategies could be put in place. I don't yet have times or dates for those, but when I do, I will definitely let you all know. All right, I'm gonna look to my husband for the next question.
Somebody just asked how they can. Is there a transcript or is the full video available if they weren't able to?
Oh, yeah. Yes, so the question was, is there a transcript or is the full video available? Yes, the video gets recorded and then it gets posted. So hopefully it will, because it'll be coming from my computer, any of the weird issues that we're having with the internet connection tonight will be okay, and you can go back and see if you missed a question or you missed a little bit of information.
Is there a plan being worked on to start opening park cities, county state parks, possibly on some sort of rotating schedule based on home address?
This is a great question. So is there a plan being worked on for reopening the parks, possibly based on a rotating, address, or people have suggested license plates and things like that? Absolutely. We don't know when we're going to be able to reopen the regional parks, right? That's going to depend on what it looks like in terms of, that we're trying to flatten so hard here in Sonoma County. But when we do, I know that Burt Whitaker and his whole team at Regional Parks are already thinking about ways that they can, encourage or mandate social distancing. What are those mitigation measures? Do they reduce the capacity in the parking lots? Do they, sort of turn people away after there's a certain capacity? Do you do it only, within your sort of certain region? They are definitely thinking about all of those things. And I want you to know that I think was probably the hardest decision that our regional parks director, Burt Whitaker, had to make in coordination. And ultimately it's our public health officer who issued that decision. But it was really hard on him. And he loves the parks so much. He knows how important they are for people's mental health and wellness. I mean, he has been in the parks. He has actually been a parks employee for decades. He started out as a lifeguard, and he was a lifeguard in the Russian River, and he worked his way up to become the department head. So it's just very near and dear to his heart. And I know that he takes the closure very seriously, and he will do whatever he can to try to reopen those parks when it is safe to do so. And that includes looking at aggressive mitigation measures to make sure that we're able to adhere to social distancing and things.
What about hazard pay for essential workers?
Question is, what about hazard pay for essential workers? This is certainly a concept that I support. I know that it has struggled to get traction with our healthcare providers. Ultimately, it's up to the healthcare providers, right? How much they pay their employees. I also would argue certainly that those folks who are carrying mail, delivering newspapers, manning the pharmacies and the grocery stores, all of our essential workers deserve that compensation and that consideration. And I really appreciate their sacrifice just keeping society running right now. But I also want to acknowledge the sacrifice of those folks who are right now stuck home, out of work, anxious about how they're going to pay the bills, because that is also a huge sacrifice. And that their personal financial sacrifice is keeping everybody in the community safe right now. So the critical thing that I believe is that we need to address all of those sacrifices, and we need to take care of each other here in Sonoma County, right? So if you're out of work, we've got to make sure that you have food, right? We have to make sure that you're not, sort of evicted because you're unable to pay your rent. We need to make sure that if you are, a vulnerable member of the population who really can't even go to the grocery store because you know that if you catch COVID-19, you will be that high-risk person, we need to make sure that food is delivered to your doorstep. But the good thing is that in Sonoma County, we do all care about each other. And I think that if we can get all of our levels of government lined up and headed in the right direction, that we can take care of those folks who need it.
Whose opinion is it that deems businesses non-essential or essential?
This is a great question. Whose opinion is it that deems businesses essential or non-essential? That is ultimately the determination of our public health officer. But I have been really kind of encouraging public health to reach out a little bit and talk to different industries about what mitigation measures could be put into place. What are low-risk activities, maybe even if it's a non-essential business, if there were certain mitigation measures put in place, how could they reopen? Or how could they find a sort of alternate model of business that would be acceptable? For instance, mail retail, right, for local shops. So we're definitely having those conversations, but it is ultimately the determination of the public health officer. And one of the things that I've been advocating for, Rabbit as the small business liaison has been advocating for, is making sure that we can share with you the data surrounding why decisions are made so that there's as much transparency as possible, because I know there's been a lot of confusion. Why is this form of construction essential and this form of construction isn't? And so I think it's really important that we share, what are those coefficients? What are we trying to get that R naught, right? The level of contagion of the disease down to an RT, which is the sort of actual transmission rate. And how effective are these measures being? So I know that it's been a point of confusion, and we are working on clearing that up as much as we can. Questions?
Do you have any information on when the antibody test will be available?
question on, do I have any information about when the antibody test will be available? I do not yet, but I will promise that I will ask that at my 8:15 a.m. tomorrow morning briefing with our public health officer, Dr. Mace, and Director of Health Services, Barbie Robinson. So I will follow up with you on that one and try to get some more information.
Will there be rapid rehousing funding?
Great question. Will there be rapid rehousing funding? So we are going to be distributing our Tourism Impact Fund grant awards, and I do actually have a that hit that need of rapid rehousing or sort of crisis fund. West County Community Services applied for some funds, a DocuFund, and River to Coast Children's Services and Latino service providers all applied for funds that would help people pay rent, or sort of basically more on the homeless prevention side. So rapid housing can mean one of two things. It can mean you actually are homeless, right, and you're trying to get into housing as quickly as possible. But sometimes we also actually use that as a term who are just about to fall into homelessness. They were evicted, although hopefully they won't be evicted because now we have tenant protection ordinance, and then you can get as possible. So we do have current rapid rehousing funding through the continuum of care, and we might augment it with the Tourism Impact Fund. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me this evening. If there are any last questions, always feel free to leave them in the comments and I will follow up. It sounds like there's a lot of interest right now in the antibody testing, so I can promise you that I will ask that first thing tomorrow morning and let you know as soon as I hear. Stay safe, everyone. I love being part of this community. I have honestly been so impressed with the way our community members have stepped up. I saw Jen Worth chiming in there. She's been distributing grocery stores and mobilizing to get people to be able to have free food from local restaurants down on the lower Russian River. I want to give a shout out actually to Raymond's Bakery, who has been delivering just hundreds of